Is up, folks? It's Mr. Walker here, coming to you with our lesson for today. We are covering that second part of Intro to Proofs, Part 2. So, before we jump into any proofs properly, we got to do some review. So, this is a review of lines cut by a transversal. Now, all these questions here are talking about two lines being parallel. Our lines are E up here and F down here. So, we got to remember some things. If two lines are parallel, we either have those angles that should be the same are the same, and the angles that should add up to 180 should add up to 180. Let's go through and do some quick review. Our first one we're talking about, it says if the measure of angle 7 is 135 and 140 is our measure for angle 1, are these two lines parallel? Now, let's look at our pair of angles. We got angle 1 here and we got angle 7 here. They tell us they're both two different measurements, but are these a pair that should be different? These two are alternate exterior angles. They're on different sides of our transversal and they are outside of our two lines. So these guys should be congruent, but are they? No, they're not. If our alternate exterior angles were congruent, they would be parallel. But because they aren't, they are not parallel. All right, let's get into our next one. Our next one they give us are angle 5 and angle 6. So when we're looking at angle 5 and 6, they say if angle 5 is 162 and angle 6 is 18, is line E parallel to line F? Our question should be, do we have an angle on both of our lines here? So when I look at 5 and 6, they're both on line F here, but we don't have any angles that are up here on line E. So really, we can't determine this. We don't got enough info. We need info from both of the lines so we can make this work. Now, our next one here gives us a little bit of algebra. So let's go through and talk about that. On our next problem, it says the measure of angle 4 is 3x minus 18. Now let's look where angle 4 is. That's right here in between the lines. And angle 5 is 105, which is also in between our lines. So find the value of x for which E is parallel to F. Now these guys, when we look at 4 and 5, they're interior, they're inside these two lines, and they're on the same side. So these are same side interior angles or consecutive interior, which means that these two are going to add up to equal that magic number 180. So we set up our math. We got 3x minus 18 equals 1, not 3x minus 18 equals 3x minus 18 plus 105 equals 180. When we solve this equation by combining our like terms and then dividing by that 3, we end up getting that x should be 31. So in order for us to go through and do any heavy algebra, any math, we got to know what type of path are we going to be dealing with. Are we having two angles that are equal to each other, or are we having two angles that should be adding up equal to 180? So take a second, pause the video, try out these next four. Well, next three, my bad. Okay, hopefully you paused this. If you did, then let's go through and go over them. Our next one's talking about angle 4 and angle 6. Angle 4, when we look at it, is up here. Angle 6, it's down here. They're in between our two lines, so that makes them interior, and they're on alternate sides, meaning they're alternate interior. Alternate interiors should be congruent. Since these guys are, that means that these lines will be parallel. Our next one we're talking about, they give us angle 1 and angle 3. When we look at angle 1 and angle 3, even though they give us the same markings, that's just because 1 and 3, they're both vertical angles. But do we have enough information about lines E and F being parallel? Not really. We don't got enough to be determined. It's really similar to our situation on number 2. All right, next one we got two angles we're focused on. We're focused on angle 4 up here and angle 8 down here. Now these two, they're in matching corners and they are going to be corresponding. Remember, corresponding angles, they're congruent. So that means that these two should be equal when we set this up to find our x. When we set this up to find our x, we find that the x is equal to 10. So that's what we need to do for that. All right, review time over, folks. Let's get into some new proofs. All right, this next proof we got, this is the congruence complement theorem. So if two angles are complements to the same angle, those two angles are congruent. So before you jump into a proof, it's important to know, look at the information they give you. Look at the given information they give you and figure out what that means. So on our givens, they tell us that angle 1 and 2 are complementary. And they say that angle 3 and 2 are complementary. What's complementary mean? Complementary means that we have two angles that add up to equal 90. So we have two pairs of angles that do this. One of them is our one from angle 1 and angle 2. The other one is angle 3 plus angle 2. Now, if we're dealing with two different equations that both equal the same thing, it's important to notice what things are going to also be the same. So let's highlight some things real quick before we jump in. Over here and over here, they're both equal to that same sum, 90. And both of these have us adding the same angle. We are adding by 2. If our sum is the same and the number we're adding on both sides is the same, what could we say about angle 1 and 3? That they'd also need to be the same. So this is our game plan. We're going to go through and work this out so we can make this make some sense. All right, starting off with our proof, we want to always list out our given information. We got two bits of givens. So angle 1 and 2 are complementary, and angle 3 and 2 are complementary. Both of those are given to you, and we want to start off with those so we can set up some more math like this. On line 3, they did exactly what we did before we started our proof. They understood what complementary meant, and we made us an equation. The measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 90. And that's because we just used that definition of what complementary meant. So if 1 and 2 add up to 90, we also know angle 3 and 2 add up to 90 because of that same thing, using the definition of complementary angles. Now, we see that we got two equations that are both equal to the same thing. So what could we do? We can use the substitution property to set both of those equal to each other. Now I see on my next line, they say we're going to be doing the subtraction property of equality. When we're doing the subtraction property, we subtract the same thing from both sides so that these guys can still maintain their equality. So what could we subtract from both sides? The thing that's the same, the measure of angle 2. Meaning that the measure of angle 1 is now equal to the measure of angle 3 because we did the subtraction property. Now, if two angles' measures are the same, those two angles are also congruent. And that's because that's what the definition of congruence is. That is when two angles have the same measure. Two shapes have the same measures. They are basically the same. Okay, so it's always good. Start off with what we have before we jump into the proof. Note some things so that you can go through and deal with the proof a little more effectively. Let's deal with our next proof. Let's go to here. Nice and easy. First thing, all right angles, they're congruent. So let's get some background knowledge on this. When we're talking about right angles are equal to 90 degrees. So when anytime they tell you that something is right, that means that you usually see those little right angle boxes, which means that they are showing a 90-degree angle. Now we're going to use this information to prove that angle 1 and angle 2 are the same by using a little bit of algebra and a little bit of knowledge that we know. Our first thing we're going to put is that our given information was stated. Angle 1 and 2 are right angles. So if these guys are 90s and these guys are both right angles. We can set up those equations equal for them. Angle 1 is equal to 90. That's us using the definition of a right angle. Angle 2 is also 90. That's also using that definition. If both of these guys equal 90, that means both of these guys can be set equal to each other using that substitution property like before. If both the angle measures are equal, then both of the angles will be congruent. So we just need to go through and understand what are we dealing with, how are we rolling, and take our time. All right, last proof that we got, and then we're home free, people, and then you got some work to do probably to study for your next exam. All right, on here they give us a couple of things. First off, let's go through and mark up what we have on here. They tell us that angle 2 up here and angle 14 down here, they are both congruent. They also tell me line M and line N are both parallel. The thing they want us to focus on are if G and H are parallel. So we're going to have to prove a couple things. If these two lines are parallel, we either need a pair of angles that add up to 180 or a pair of angles that should be congruent being congruent. So let's go through and figure this out. First thing we got are that 14 and 2, they're congruent. That's given to you. They also tell you lines M and N are parallel. Remember, if two lines are parallel, that means that there's different copies of angles that we should be seeing on these. One of these copies is actually showing up on line 3. It says line 3 with angle 2 and angle 6. These guys are both the same. Now, if these two are both the same, that's because they're on corresponding angles. They are corresponding angles. Now, because these lines are parallel, those angles would be corresponding, they would be congruent. I also see that that angle 2 earlier was mentioned, and it was set equal to 14. If angle 2 is equal to 14 and equal to angle 6, I can now say that angle 14 is equal to angle 6 because of using the transitive property with lines 1 and 3. Now, if these guys are now congruent, I can now say that I have enough information to say that these lines are parallel because of the converse of the corresponding angles postulate. If I have two congruent corresponding angles, then that means that those lines should be parallel. Folks, I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you go through and study over the weekend. See ya.